This is a technique I have been wanting to try for a long time. Molding resin to look like molten glass to create a vase. The creative possibilities are endless. Along the way, I learned some really cool things that I'll share with you. But I wanted this to be more than just a vase. I wanted the art and the pedestal to feel like one cohesive piece, like they belong together. Somewhere in the process though, something changed. This video isn't just about making, it's about knowing when to stop. I had to walk away from this project, not because it failed, but because of what I realized along the way. And that realization is going to shape the way I approach every project moving forward. And I know that sounds sensational, but I really had quite the breakthrough, and this video is brought to us by Squarespace. Check it. I'm going to mix up and pour resin onto this plastic sheet. The glossier the plastic, the glossier the resin will be on that side. And to keep it all contained, I'm using some aluminum foil tape to create a wall. In other tutorials, I've seen people use weather strip molding for this, and that looks like it works great. I don't want it to be a perfect circle or an oval, but instead a very organic shape. So the trick to this technique is timing, letting the resin cure just long enough before setting it over a mold. You have to find that sweet spot, not too hardened that it won't bend, but not so soft that it turns into a disaster. I'm not claiming ownership of this technique, and there are a few tutorials out there, but in all of them, the creators use these found objects like PVC pipes or plastic bowls as their molds. I have the unfair advantage of being able to create my own mold with my woodworking tools. And to give it a handmade glass bowl look, I'm using some blue and white pigments radiating outward from the center. This is the air quality meter that I use to make sure the room is safe to work in. I'm actually looking to upgrade to something that's a little bit more advanced, so if you have any suggestions for me, please let me know. While the resin was setting up, I milled up a cheap 2x4 into this thick boy to turn on the lathe. And here's the first lesson I learned. Turning a 2x4 on a lathe sucks. 2x4 trees are grown very fast, which means the growth rings are spread far apart, making it hard to carve smoothly. Instead of clean shavings, I got a pile of splinters. I tapered the shape slightly so the vase could slide off without getting stuck. In the injection mold industry, this taper is known as a draft. The time that it takes for the resin to hit that sweet spot varies depending on a few things: the type of resin, the air temperature, and the thickness of the pour. I planned on checking in at 4 hours, expecting I would need more time. But when I did, it had already hardened, and Daniel had left for the day, so I had to quickly set up the camera and film myself placing it on the mold. But as you can see, it wasn't cooperating. It had passed the point of being shapeable. I tried forcing it around the wooden post and adding some weight to the edges, but nothing worked. So I set it aside to figure out what to do with later.
Let's try this again, but this time, let's make it way more complicated. Because when you fail at something, the next logical step is to make it way more complex to increase your chances of failure again.
Actually, my goal was to make it more predictable, to refine the process so it felt more like my idea. Whether or not I invented this technique, having that sense of ownership helps me connect with the piece. So this time, I designed a more deliberate shape in Adobe Illustrator and printed it out. I like the idea of having more defined edges rather than the freeform oval from before. I cut the shape out on my new favorite tool, a scroll saw from Harbor Freight, which might be one of their best deals. This is not sponsored. I have no affiliation with Harbor Freight or Bauer. I just really like this scroll saw. It's fun, easy to use, and it's very well built. I glued the cutout onto a piece of melamine and added walls around it. I then found what I thought was a cheap silicone kit on Amazon. It turns out I needed to use the entire kit since the mold was so big. So this one silicone mold cost me $35. I will definitely be holding on to this and using it again in future projects. The advantage of using a silicone mold is I can reuse it multiple times and measure exactly how much resin I need for the pour. To do that, I poured water into the mold to get that measurement. I then mixed and poured another batch of blue and white resin. But this time, I checked every hour to catch that perfect moment. 3 hours turned out to be the winner, and since that worked so well, I poured a second layer and added that on top of the first to create a more chaotic layered effect. While that was curing, I worked on the pedestal. I wanted it to look like something that you would find in an art gallery, but made from walnut, my favorite wood. Every edge has a 45-degree miter, including the top and the bottom.
I want to make it look like the vase is melting into the stand. So I would pour some more epoxy up here and have it drip off the vase, and then just flood the top of it and have it go over the sides. And then to enhance those drips going over the sides, I drew up some more drips in Adobe Illustrator, and I would make this out of epoxy and have it come down like that. And thinking I would do a contrasting color, so like a fire red and orange. And I don't know, to me, that just sounds really cool. So I designed some paint drips in Adobe Illustrator, and this time I decided to cut them out on the laser. And instead of making a silicone mold, I coated the MDF with wax and mold release. As I was working through this project, I kept thinking about how ideas evolve. Sometimes they come together perfectly, and other times they take you somewhere unexpected. That's what makes creativity so exciting. And when it comes to sharing your ideas with the world, Squarespace makes that process just as seamless. Squarespace is the all-in-one platform that helps you turn your ideas
into reality. Whether it's a portfolio, an online store, or a blog, their beautifully designed templates and easy to use tools let you focus on what you create rather than the technical side of things. With design intelligence, Squarespace takes the hassle out of building a site, letting you customize everything effortlessly. Whether you're showcasing your work, selling your products, or launching something entirely new, Squarespace makes it simple. I have been using Squarespace for over 10 years. It's streamlined, intuitive, and makes running a creative business so much easier. So, head to squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/makesomething to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Now let's get back to this build because this is where things took a turn.
I can only think of one other time I abandoned a project before finishing it. My coffee mug project. Everything started breaking, and at some point it felt like a sign from the universe to just step away from the shop and take a nap. I don't know exactly why I lost interest in this project, but I have a good guess. This was supposed to be an experiment, a chance to try something new with resin, to add another technique to my arsenal. And I did just that early on. And once I had that satisfaction, I think the thrill of it was gone. At first, I felt a lot of guilt. I put so much time and material into this, and I come from a hard-working family. My parents were factory workers where you did the job whether you liked it or not, and that's always been my mindset. Finish the job and move on. But I'm not making this for a client. I'm making this for myself, and these are supposed to be the projects that are the most fun. Not too long ago, I would have forced myself to finish it, just to say, look at this, it's done. But right now, that just doesn't feel right. And maybe that's the problem with social media. All the videos and photos, we only publish the polished versions of ourselves. I catch myself comparing my work to other creators all the time. I know that I shouldn't, but it's hard not to. So I started digging into why I was feeling this way. Why didn't I want to finish this project? I had what I thought were really good ideas. And that's when I came across the sunk cost fallacy. And man, this hit hard. Sunk cost fallacy is the idea that just because you spent time on something doesn't mean it deserves more. Just because you spent time on something doesn't mean it deserves more. This was mind-blowing. This was so freeing. I don't know why, like a certain phrase or the way something is, I just don't know why sometimes these quotes and phrases hit hard, but this one definitely did. I feel this all the time. And just to put a term to it, to give it a name, helps me understand that I can just let go. I don't need to finish this. I can move on. Finishing is not always the goal. Growth is. It's the journey. It's not the end product. So what am I gonna do with this? And I got the stand over here too. Ugh. What am I gonna do with this? I'll ask my Patreon members, but maybe somebody will want this. Technically, this could be done. I just didn't finish the complete idea. Not every idea becomes what you thought it would, and that's okay. Maybe the next one will. I'm really excited about this dog bed build coming up. Yes, another dog bed. I'll explain why in that video, but I'm excited about that. And so maybe that contributed to why I lost interest in this project, because I was ready to move on to the next big thing. I am not abandoning this project. I am choosing to move on creatively. I notice within myself that when I get close to a finish line, I sometimes struggle to cross it. Maybe that's another side effect of social media. Everything moves so fast. Satisfaction is immediate. And if something doesn't hold our attention, we just swipe on to the next thing. Maybe I have some more work to do on myself. Maybe we all do. I had a couple of really good breakthroughs with this, and hopefully you got something out of it as well. I hope to see you in the next video. And as always, be safe, have fun, stay passionate, and make something. And you don't have to finish it if you don't want to. Gigantic shout out to my top Patreons this month: Ron from Gnomeworks, Jim from Wiser Bees, Jason Ramos, and Jonathan Ransom. Thank you.
Over on Making It Podcast, we talk about sunk cost fallacy in more detail. If you're not familiar with the Making It Podcast, it's an audio podcast I've been doing with Jimmy DiResta and Bob Claggett for over 10 years. There's like 450 episodes. We now record video, and you can watch those videos here on YouTube.